Here's two units of handgunners. The one on the left is engaged normally, and the one on the right is firing in combat. But to get units to fire like this, you're gonna need a few steps, and no, it does not involve guard mode. Now most people say guard mode is the solution to get units to shoot in combat. Instead, you actually want to have fire at will turned on specifically. Guard mode doesn't seem to actually make much of a difference. Now if you don't believe me, take a look at this situation. Both units are going to be given the same commands, but the one on the left has guard mode turned on. You can see after a short second of being engaged in melee, both units go into combat and stop shooting. But instead, if you have a similar situation where the left unit has fire at will turned on and the other doesn't, then you get your expected results. The handgunners keep firing without stopping. This works with Free Company Militia, Shades, and basically any unit, but your mileage may vary depending on the formation. Loose formations are best, and the best type of weapon is gunpowder. Even though you'd think weapons with arcs of fire would have an easier time shooting over units, the AI generally doesn't take advantage of that. But now let's take a look at the damage. After all, most ranged units have an option to retreat most of the time, so if you're gonna be leaving them in combat, it better be worth it. Starting with the first test, we have handgunners against some basic dwarf warriors. The damage is pretty nice, but this is basically an optimal situation for the handgunners since the dwarves don't do a lot of damage. But despite that, and quite a bit of time shooting, the handgunners really don't get that much damage in. So in this case, running away is probably a better choice. But instead, if you take a look at the situation of Shades versus dwarves, you get a much more different story. The Shades have a loose formation, which helps dramatically, and the difference is night and day. On the left, you can see the Shades lose when stuck in combat, but on the right, they actually manage to win it. And as an added bonus too, it seems like firing in combat doesn't decrease their combat potential in the slightest. I also found that going for a box formation is the best strategy here. It allows more Shades to fire at once and drastically increases their DPS. With a wider formation, most of the Shades ended up going into combat, and without many of them shooting, they ended up losing. So overall, it's a pretty fun and actually quite useful technique in the right circumstances. Just make sure you don't screw yourself over because there are quite a few caveats. First of all, if you want to get into a fire in combat state, you just need to right click the unit. If you right click and hit Alt, this will send your units into melee and they will stop shooting entirely even if they have fire at will turned on. If you don't have fire at will turned on, the units will fire a single volley and then go back into melee without getting more shots in. You'll also want to be careful which units you try this technique on, since monstrous units and even monstrous infantry will break your formation and stop you from firing. Lastly, make sure you don't spam click. In practice, this makes a unit stutter around a little bit and actually prevents them from shooting if you spam click too much. Now a unit that definitely benefits from this trick is Free Company Militia. If you'd like to see other tricks using them, check out the video in the bottom right. Special thanks to my deck gunners and Fleet Admiral members for supporting the channel.